Episode 11, A Step Closer. Nova was flipping through another volume when she suddenly heard a noise outside the library door. Looking up, she found Lucian Hardy standing in the middle of the corridor, frowning. "Stay behind me, Nova. Looks like we have uninvited guests." The catcher got up from her chair. "What the..." "Get ready to defend yourselves." She stood slightly behind Lucian, ready to create a protective barrier around them if necessary. The door handle moved down slowly as if the person on the other side was deliberately playing on their nerves. The flames of the fireplace shuddered, and for a moment the room plunged into deafening silence, until finally a man stepped out of the darkness. Nova had never seen him before, but hearing Lucian exhale, she understood who was standing in front of them. "That's..."
"Good evening, Lucian. Signora Nova. My apologies for the noise. I hope I didn't scare you. It's high time I figure out what to do with the heaps of items in the living room. Alas, there are always more important things to do."
"My lord." Lucian bowed. Nova could feel his slightly worried gaze on her. "I'm not too familiar with vampire customs, but it's pretty clear what's expected of me at this moment." Curtsy. She curtsied awkwardly, bowing her head. Lucian smiled and Constantino walked over to stand in front of her. "Lucian appreciates that you respected vampire customs."
"I was wondering when we would meet in person. It should have happened much earlier."
She couldn't make out what exactly his cologne smelled of. It was heavy, thick fragrance with a touch of bitterness. "To be honest, I didn't assume it would happen at all. I understood you're a very busy person."
"Oh, of course I am. Even so, one should always be able to find a minute for a time catcher."
He narrowed his eyes, appraising her.
"When I first learned that a woman with such a rare gift fell into Vesper's capable hands by happy accident, I must admit I didn't set my expectations too high."
Nova held back a smirk. He had no idea how far he was from the truth. "I didn't fall into Vesper's hands. I came to her myself, in a happy accident. Was the name Cardinal Barone. Low status path.
"However, you're going to show us what you're capable of, aren't you? I expect you to learn a lot from your new circle of friends. Your powers will play a pivotal role in our opposition to the established order. I have no doubt about that."
Nova wasn't sure how she would respond. While she was thinking it over, Lucian spoke up. "Did your trip to Lisbon end earlier than planned?" His voice was dulled by the unusual obedience. Ready to serve his patriarchy, stood off to the side, his hands clasped behind his back. Lucian must really respect him. Feels like he's ready to abandon everything if Constantino so much as breathes the word. She shivered slightly, wondering if she gave a similar impression standing next to the Cardinal. Something about that stung her, but she brushed off the unpleasant feeling.
"I wasn't supposed to be back for another week, but there is disorder in Lord Castro's clan. Dealing with his problems was not the reason I went to the meeting."
The patriarch went to the reading area and sat down in Lucian's chair. Glancing at the stacks of books on the table, he nodded in approval.
"I see you found my collection useful. Anything of interest so far?"
"We're still searching."
"Have you decided what your next step will be?"
"I think we should search the places where he's hid the painting, study the recordings of Hans Frank, the last owner of the painting, take a closer look at the monuments. Men. We'll do The owner. Maybe he hid the portrait in some special place. We could do that if we somehow managed to gain access to his correspondence and diaries, but I would suggest working in a less obvious direction. People have been searching for this painting for many years now. I think all clues that lie on the surface have already been investigated many times. I would focus on the monument, Sven.
You think the portrait ended up with one of them?
Lucian shrugged. I find it likely that the portrait is not lost, but stolen. They work closely with the objects of cultural heritage. I'd be surprised if none of them ever thought about seeking a personal profit. Now we have to figure out who exactly could have taken the portrait, and what happened to them afterwards, both the painting and the person. Going to the table and opening up the volume he had been reading before Constantino showed up, Lucian ran his fingers over the page. Many of the monument men died, but some are still alive. We'll have to narrow down the list first, and then try to talk to those who are of interest to us. Gushi Diabor. Is there any information about her there? Saving Lady from, or with an ermine mentions her name several times. She took a part in the search. Gushi Diabor. Yes, here, and born in the Netherlands. Manager of the museum. No record of death, so she could have been alive when this encyclopedia was published 3 years ago.
A lot can change in 3 years, but at least we have somewhere to start.
Constantino intertwined his fingers and crossed his legs.
I like this. I think you should find Madame Diabor, and maybe she has something useful to share. Aside from that, there is something else I'd like to propose. As soon as we realized the next step in solving the mystery would be Raffaello's missing painting, I began to make some inquiries. I never traced a connection with the monument's men, but I did entertain the notion that the beasts may well have been sold on the black market. Fortunately, I know people from those circles.
Are there any circles he doesn't know people in? Well, when you're a vampire of his classification. On second thought, him having connections with art and antique dealers makes sense. There are so many artifacts in Constantino's library alone, and all of them are probably extremely valuable. Who knows how he got his hands on them?
There is a private auction happening soon. The most important figures of the underground art trade are going to be there. If the portrait was ever the subject of a transaction, at least one of them would know about it. Of course, we shouldn't expect them to be eager to share their knowledge, but I think we can work with that. I always get invited to such events. It costs me a great effort, but I've managed to secure permission to bring a guest with me this time. What do you say, Nova? Will you join me?
Nova blinked a couple of times, looking at Constantina. Me. I mean, he is a vampire of knowledge and time. Yes, I will.
Great. I admire your confidence.
There's only one issue. Won't the fact that I'm a wanted witch pose a bit of a problem?
Oh, believe me, you won't be the only witch or the only wanted person there. In this community, people don't care if an other or an ordinary. If you have troubles with the law, all that matters to them is what you are selling and how much you are asking for. Such transactions are done in secret, so getting into those circles is no simple task. It's only possible through recommendations of trusted participants. If someone turns someone in, everything will collapse like dominoes. Everyone will be affected without exception. But I'm in a very good standing there. No one will question my choice, so don't you worry.
Where will the auction take place?
Not far from Geneva. We will get there by private plane. The event organizers and I have taken care of everything, including border control.
Another invitation will allow you to take Vesper, Onyx, Lucian, or Shin to the auction, and improve your friendly or romantic relationship. Would you be able to get another invitation?
I could try, although I don't quite understand why I would need to. Who do you want to take with you?
I need to invite... Onyx seems like a good fit.
Sorry.
She's an Anamorphix. She often tracks people for Vesper.
Ah, the cat. And why would we need her? To attract attention with an extra pair of ears?
Nova didn't appreciate the mockery in his voice, but refrained from commenting. She is my familiar. I want her to accompany me. She could play the role of my assistant, make me more important in the eyes of others if I decide to pretend to be a wealthy collector.
Well, since you're asking, I'll find out about an additional invitation. No promises.
Thank you.
I will contact you when it's time. Meanwhile, continue working with what you have. Try to gather as much data possible before the auction. It could be very useful.
Yes, of course. I'll talk to Nikolai and ask him for help. Standing up, Constantino straightened the folds of his clothing. His gaze turned to the portrait of his wife, and he smiled gently.
Wish us luck, Vincesca. Hopefully everything will change soon, and none of us will ever have to suffer your fate again.
Something in that phrase and this tone made Nova doubt his sincerity. She remembered Lucian's words about the power-hungry nature of vampires, and suspicion stirred in her chest. Maybe he killed her so that the clan would lose its leader, so that he could take this position himself. I don't think I'll ever know for sure, and yet...
Well, it's nice meeting you, Nova. I won't promise you any more. Read to your heart's content. The library is at your full disposal. Good night.
Lucian bowed again, and Constantino left the hall. Nova and Lucian returned to their chairs. What do you think of Constantino? I think... he seemed very mysterious. Like he doesn't say a third of what he thinks, or he says one thing while actually thinking about something entirely different. Such personalities are difficult to trust. I understand. It took me a while to get used to it, too. I think you'll adapt over time, too. When they finished their work, it was after midnight. Lucian transported the tired catcher back to the nest. It was dark in the common room, so she didn't need to ask for him for the drops. Nova fell on the sofa and yawned, covering her mouth with her hand. Someone should go to bed. Definitely, but how do I make myself get up and walk to my bedroom when the sofa's so soft? Her head seemed to swell after the amount of text she read. Nova flexed her fingers, wincing in pain. I thought your hand would hurt. You've written so many pages. I don't want to forget anything important, so no way I can fit so much information into my brain. Giving her a smile, Lucian held out his hand to her. Noah tilted her head in puzzlement, but he remained silent, merely gesturing with his fingers, subtly urging her to trust him. and she decided she would allow herself to. As soon as she placed her palm in his, Lucian took it in both hands and began to knead it slowly. The sigh of relief threatened to escape her lips, but she held it back, closing her eyes. The witch felt her body surrender, every muscle relaxing a little. Lucian's fingers gently caressed her skin, massaging the numb areas. He took his time, as if he was ready to stand like this for hours if it meant she'd feel better. Opening her eyes, seeing how attentively he was looking at her, Nova suddenly stirred as if emerging from a pleasant dream. Lucian grinned faintly and bent down, not letting go of her hand and not taking his eyes off her. His lips touched her knuckles, lingering for a couple of moments. I hope it helped. He didn't specify what he meant, the kiss or the massage. She knew the answer to the question, anyway. Yes. Good night. He disappeared into the shadows, leaving Nova in the frozen silence of the night. Finally gathering her strength, she got up and dragged her exhausted body into the bedroom. A week later. Nova knocked, and the door opened almost right away. Slipping inside, she pulled down her hood. It wasn't much warmer in the room than it was outside. She shivered, hugging herself. Hello. Renato nodded at her, rubbing his palms together. He was squatting down by the wood stove that he was probably trying to light before the woman arrived. It's strange seeing him in casual clothes. We have some diamond outfits to pick. Dark outfit, trench coat, casual outfit. I'll go with the dark one. What a lovely place. Suits us well, considering our situation. One might say this hotel was created for clandestine meetings, and the creaking of the bed in the room above, accompanied by the muffled female moans, completed his thought. And for certain other kinds of activities. Nova laughed briefly, looking around. The owners of this establishment seemed convinced that tables and chairs were deeply overrated. Apart from the bed, there was practically no furniture. Given the lack of options, the witch sat down on the bedspread, trying to not think about how often, or rather how rarely, the bed linen was changed here. Renato picked up a piece of wood from the floor and turned it over, examining it. Well, it's worth a try. After a while, the fire finally started, casting an iridescent glow of yellow and orange that illuminated the room. Nova exhaled, enjoying the warmth. Why didn't they just use magic? Renato got to his feet. Thanks for making a fire. I definitely didn't dress for the weather. My fingers are freezing. You're welcome. Looking at the time, he frowned slightly. Now, we have a lot to discuss. First, tell me about your findings and plans in as much detail as possible, since we don't know when we'll be able to meet again. She started explaining details that she couldn't mention in her brief messages. The Cardinal let them exchange news through text, but the most important points could only be shared face to face. That was why they were in the old, dirty hotel. Renato had found something worthwhile, but thought it was too risky to text about it. Finishing her report, Nova clasped her hands, resting her elbows on her knees. Our working theory is that one of the monument's men stole the painting, and then sold it. No evidence, only guessed back based on the books. Vesper managed to find a couple of people. She had someone talk to them, but that didn't get us any new information. The auction that Constantino invited me to will take place in a week, if the portrait was indeed sold. This will be our chance to find out about the transaction. The only chance. Yes. We're still counting on Gus G. de Boer. She was involved in the search for the painting. Should still be alive, but seems to be living as a recluse. She doesn't have a family. No one knows anything about her. That's what I wanted to discuss. Did you find something? Possibly. Opening a briefcase with a combination lock that he had brought, Renato took out a thin stack of papers. I've made some inquiries. She was a parishioner of the Church of St. Peter and St. Paul in Amsterdam. Apparently, she was a woman devoted to God. So much so that she donated her apartment to her parish. However, upon returning home after the war, she had a change of heart and rescinded her offer. Had she seen so much horror that it made her lose her faith? Probably. Renato handed her a piece of paper with an address written in neat handwriting. I don't know what happened to her apartment after that. De Boer could have continued to live in it, or she could have moved out and sold it. Still, I thought it might help with the search somehow. Quite likely. I'll try to find a way to bring this up with the others. Just suggest looking into her real estate history. Something will probably come up, even outside the connections with the church. Oh, and then there's this. I don't know if it's of any use. It's her photo. Take a look. Nova looked closely at the photo, trying to remember every detail, just in case. What is she writing? I wasn't able to find out. She returned the photo. I see. Thank you for the information. Nodding, he looked through the documents again to make sure he hadn't missed anything. I think that's all. Do you have anything else to share? She looked at him thoughtfully. He was a mystery to her. Impenetrable. What does he think of me, of my role? What's he like behind his ordination? I have a question. Yes. How long have you been serving God? That had little to do with anything, but Nova decided definitely wouldn't hurt for her to get to know him more. Their mission was too significant for him to remain a blank slate. After a moment of hesitation, he answered, Depends on what you mean by the word serve. Do you want to know when I became a priest? When I decided I wanted to become one? Or are you asking me when I started believing? Why not all three? Nova shrugged, letting him choose. I've been striving to live God's way for a long time, as I can remember. But I must admit, I had no idea that my faith would eventually lead me to the seminary. I thought you were very confident in your calling. I am. But it took me a while to realize exactly what my calling was. I grew up as the son of a bishop, though the church always had a large presence in my life. And yet, as is typical for children, I dreamed of becoming a firefighter, a singer, a physician, physicist, astronaut, grocery store clerk, as I was sure that the position would give me unlimited access to free sweets. How disappointing it must have been when the harsh truth dawned on you. You have no idea. Are you telling me we can't get free sweets? Damn it! There goes my hopes and dreams. His shoulders relaxed and his gaze held a kind of softness he hadn't allowed himself before. Nova almost forgot who they were. She almost forgot how they met and why they were in this room. She almost forgot the color of her own eyes under the contacts that under his clothes there hung a cross warmed by the heat of his body. Nova felt her heart got heavy. Nova. He turned away, frowning, and then shook his head. Whatever Renato wanted to say, it remained locked inside him. Reality bound the witch with its frosty chains, reminding her of how things truly were. They were involuntarily partners, not friends. An awkward silence pulled them into its tight, stinging embrace. Both of them began to carefully examine the worn floor so they wouldn't accidentally lock eyes. Renato coughed, interlacing his fingers. Where were we? Oh, yes. In the end, I did hear God's call and decided to follow. I was an ordinary, or ordained at 25, 3 years ago. But even if that hadn't worked out for whatever reason, I would have served him. Anyway, is there a more honorable way to serve him than carry his will into the world? It's not about honor, Nova. I chose this path because I dreamed of recognition, but because I felt it was the right thing to do. For you, for example, why did you accept the test that the Cardinal Baron assigned you? It was necessary. It was necessary. He understood those words in his own way, leaving her drowning in a sea of doubts and questions. It was necessary for whom? For God, who would never accept her, no matter what she did, no matter how hard she tried. For the Cardinal, who had been preparing her for this for many years. Or for her, so as not to feel superfluous in this world. Nana will remember this conversation. I think it's time for you to go, Nova. Better not stay too long. We wouldn't want someone to accidentally discover that you're missing. Yes, you're right. After saying goodbye, she pulled her hood back over her head and left the hotel. There it is. Everyone looked at Vesper expectantly, putting down the phone. She pointed to the paper with an address, the same address Renato showed Nova. An apartment in Amsterdam. De Boer did sell it. Another dead end, then. Can we contact the current owners? We have their phone number. We'll call, of course, but I don't expect anything will come out of it. It's been many years since the sale. Considering how difficult it is to find her, it's unlikely she would keep in touch with the people she sold her apartment to. Do you think she may be dead? Possibly, but there's no data on that either. No death certificate, nothing. She's a ghost. Alright, let's try someone else. There are other people on the list, aren't there? A couple more. Several descendants of the deceased monuments men. Let's focus on that. There's little time left before the auction. We need to at least find something. Nova felt the weight of disappointment. She hoped this information would help them, but now all they could do was go back to studying newspapers and books. Nova felt that Onyx was experiencing similar emotions. They looked at each other, and the Anamorphic smiled in support. A few hours later, Vesper's phone rang again. She stepped away to talk and returned with an excited blush on her cheeks. She called. She contacted us herself. Gus G? Yes, she heard we were looking to interview her and decided to contact us. Shen glanced at Lucian. That's my line. How did she know someone was looking for her? People I had making calls posed as journalist and always left a phone number just in case. Someone we spoke to must have passed the information on to her. Why does that matter? We found her. That's what's important. Finally, we can talk to her. She said she'd only agree to be interviewed in person. She won't do it over the phone. Where is she based? Nyon, which is pretty close to Geneva. Very convenient. What a coincidence. That's why you'll have to be the one to meet with her, Nova. You and Constantino are flying to Switzerland the day before the auction. You'll have time to talk to Justji. Actually, I was hoping Onyx could come with me. I asked Constantino to get her an invitation. He informed me earlier today that it worked out. Oh, really? I've never left Rome. Thanks for thinking of me, Nova. It's gonna be fun. You are going to be there on business. Do try to be serious. Yes, Mum. So, that's sorted. There's something else I wanted to discuss. After finishing the work in the vault, the Incineration Alliance returned to the common room. There you are. I've been waiting for you. His enthusiasm suggested only one thing, and that thing had everyone looking at Jorge in fear. I don't like this already. Ha ha ha. Encouraging. Nova smiled and put her hand on the herbalist's shoulder. Why have you been waiting? Well, because I had a breakthrough. He rushed off to the kitchen and returned with a bowl of something. He set it down on the table, beaming with pride. I don't even have a wish for what this is. Alright. Let's just see. What does it smell like? Onyx cautiously stepped forward and sniffed the dish. Nuts. Nuts, that's the key. Come on, try it. Food smelled okay, but no one rushed to try. Shen squinted at the dish, Onyx pursed her lips, Lucian immediately shook his head, and Vesper seemed to be debating whether to pretend she was allergic. Oh, he definitely won't let us go until someone tries it. Wait for someone to sacrifice themselves. Clenching her fists, Nova took a confident step forward. Give me a spoon. Everyone started clapping, admiring her dedication. She sat down at the table. This is it, a proper test of willpower. I hope you survive this. Good luck. Or if she goes down with food poisoning after this experiment, I swear. You say that like you've never poisoned me. That was different. Yeah, right. Onyx bent down and began dabbing Nova's forehead with a napkin that she picked up from the table. We've been preparing for this for years, remember. Don't lose faith in yourself, you've got this. Yes, Coach. Years? You've been preparing for his cooking for years. She gripped the spoon tightly in her hand, hypnotized by the dish, until she finally dared to put it in the food. Quickly, before her body could react to the risk, she ate the first spoonful. At first, all she could taste were nuts. The flavor lingered on her tongue, tart, bright, matte. Not bad, I think? Yes! He shot his fist into the air, triumphant, and Nova ran her tongue across the roof of her mouth a couple of times, still waiting. And there it was, the taste of bitter grass, chalk, vying with some kind of sour mint. Oh no. The witch forced herself to swallow the strange substance, but it took a while to return her face to a neutral expression after cramping up for a couple of moments. Sorry, Jorge. This is impossible to eat. She expected him to be sad, but he was still smiling, hands on his hips. Whatever. This is the best reaction I've received in the last couple of months. Progress! You didn't spit it all back onto your plate. You even liked it in the beginning. Definitely one of my better dishes. Considering how about all the dishes I remember were... It's probably true. Nova rose from the table. I just hope there won't be any delayed effects. Well done, and all, but I think it's high time you found another hobby. Nope. I know for sure that cooking is my thing. I don't think cooking feels the same way. Nobody cares. When others start living normally, I'll open my own restaurant. The thought of an entire menu of his dishes made everyone shudder. Nova shrugged. Yeah, you should probably keep your day job, dude. Well, you won't be bankrupt, that's for sure. Double specialties. People can come to eat if something's wrong with their taste buds, or they want to buy something to poison their enemies with. Laugh all you want, you'll see. You'll be asking me for seconds soon. Whistling happily, Jorge took the barely touched bowl and retired to the kitchen. In all the years I've known him, his optimism never fails to amaze me.
I wouldn't call that optimism. An unwavering willingness to deny reality, perhaps.
Shin's comment was full of skepticism, as always, but his lips curved into a slight smile that Nova didn't witness too often. Finally, with all matters concluded, Vesper, Lucian, and Shin left the nest. Nova was about to go to her room, but Onyx stopped her. Come up to my room for a second. Catcher squinted and then nodded with a smile, anticipation what, or rather who, she would see there. Sure. It's us. Talus flapped his wings a couple of times, sitting on the windowsill. Hi, nice to see you healthy. I think she'd appreciate if you thanked her with words, if you're ready for that, of course. Onyx's eyes twinkled. Nova didn't know what she was communicating to Talus, but decided to clarify. You can remain a raven, if that's more comfortable for you. Talus is pleased that you are considerate of him. We've discussed this. He just needs to gather some courage. After a brief pause, the raven flew to the middle of the room and turned, raising its wings. Oh, interesting. Nova, Talus. Talus, Nova. The witch looked at Talus curiously. A sudden realization struck her. He was in the room when Onyx and I... Not that it changes anything, but it's still awkward. Talus quivered. His eyes darted around the room, his movement sharp, bird-like. Talus, nice to meet you. Nova stepped towards him, extending her hand. Hesitantly, he put his hand in hers. His grip was uneven. His fingers squeezed her slightly, one by one. Heavy, hoarse sound never formed a word. Talus let out an exasperated sigh, looking away. Onyx approached him, smiling at her friend. He spent a few last years as a raven, so it's going to take time for him to relearn how to inhabit his human form. So the more time you spend in animal form, the more difficult it is to turn? Sort of, yes. A couple of weeks won't really have an effect, but years. I turn often, so it's pretty easy. I can even remove my ears, tails, if I want to. That does require a lot of presence, though, so I can't be in a pure human form for long. Being a cat is different. Want to try to say something again, Talus? He frowned. It seemed like the sound was challenging for him. Appreciate it. Nova laughed. You're very welcome. Why haven't you assumed your human form for so long? Talus shrugged and then shot a pleading look at Onyx. He's always preferred being a raven. At some point he decided he'd remain that way forever. That I sort of understand, but what I don't understand is why he'd hide his nature from his friends. Onyx nudged Talus lightly with her elbow. Okay, you're fine now. That's what matters. She turned back to the witch. He's decided to turn more often, so he should regain his speech pretty soon. Yes. Great. She still had a lot of questions, starting with who cursed him and why. However, she decided now was not the best time to ask. Would you like to stay with us for a while? Nova knew the right thing to do would be to come up with an excuse to leave, but it wouldn't hurt anyone if I stay for a while. Okay. Settled on the floor, Nova relaxed a little, enjoying their company, listening to Onyx's stories and Talus's hoarse, intermittent laughter. A part of her, the part she preferred to ignore, was jealous of their friendship. She grew up homeschooled, her obligations looming over her, so even as she grew up, she kept to herself, right until her mission began. Looks like Onyx and Talus are very close. Nova noticed a tenderness in his gaze as he looked at Onyx, had a good time. I don't know him that well yet, but I have a feeling Talus might be in love. Hey, psst, that's our woman! What? That thought was just a theory, but the catcher thought about how that made her feel before brushing it off in frustration. It doesn't make me feel anything at all, because it doesn't matter and it doesn't concern me. Yep. She joined the conversation again. Waking up indecently early in the morning on the day of their departure to Geneva, Nova was surprised to find that she was quite cheerful. I didn't expect to be so excited for this trip. Hopefully we can make progress in the investigation. I need to get dressed if I don't want to be late. I'll go to the meeting with Gusji wearing the same outfit. Should choose something with long sleeves to hide the mark. The brand. Earth, water, fire, air. I like the fire look, I'm not gonna lie, I dig it. All good. Ah, we can now change her hair color. Dyed dark brown with curls. Current hairstyle. We can change her hair. I like the voluminous black, though. Why not? All good. After putting on her contacts and checking that she hadn't forgotten anything for the last time, Nova took her bag and left the room. The flight took only an hour and a half. The catcher worried something would go wrong, but as Constantino promised, no problems arose. Entering the apartment, she set her bag on the floor.
There are several rooms here. You may choose whichever ones you like the most. Or one to share if you prefer.
Onyx hardly heard the last comment. She had already run off to inspect their accommodation. Nova was quick to change the topic. Thank you, Constantino. Whose apartment is this?
Mine. One of mine. You know, I really do love Geneva. I won't bother you. Get settled. A car will arrive in the evening to take you to Nyon. As for tomorrow, I'll pick you up.
Bowing slightly, he walked away through the shadows. Onyx and Nova chose their rooms. They had a snack together. Afterwards, Onyx turned and went for a walk, while Nova decided to practice some new spells. I envy her. I would have loved a chance to explore a new place, but in my situation, it's better not to take any chances. The driver the Constantino sent arrived right on time. Getting ready to leave, Nova gathered her thoughts, once again remembering the questions she had to ask. She was worried, realizing how much depended on this conversation. I'll be watching through the window, as agreed. You're going to do fine. Nova nodded with a smile. She wasn't alone, and that mattered a great deal to her. Yeah. Come on in. A dried-up, colorless old woman opened the door. Everything about her seemed brittle, tired, but there was a haughty tension in the curve of her lips. Here she is, the mysterious José de Boer. Remain standing at the door, say hello, and introduce yourself, nod, and go inside. Hello. My name is... I remember the name. They told me on the phone. Go on. So impatient. Well, at least we were trying to be respectful, so that's all that matters. As soon as the catcher stepped into the apartment, the mustiness hit her nose, the smell of abandonment. A restrained cough squeezed her lungs, the boards groaned under her feet as they walked into the living room. Most of the surfaces were covered in a layer of dust, and Nova noticed a huge spider web in the corner. The house is clearly neglected. With a heavy sigh, Gus G fell into the armchair and intertwined her fingers, folding her hands on her stomach. Then she nodded at the couch in front of her.
Sit down.
Her intonation turned the word with an invitation into an order. All that remained was to obey.
Well, what did you want with me so badly, searching for me high and low?
She smacked her lips, measuring her guest with an incredulous, accusing look. Sitting up straighter, Nova met her eyes. She's definitely not happy we're here, but she didn't want to see us. She wouldn't have called. Given her negative attitude, this conversation is unlikely to go the way I had hoped. Well, let's get right to the point. Our publishing house wants to make a series of articles about the Monuments, Fine Arts, and Archives program. We've talked to some of your former colleagues, but we're missing something special, something that could connect all the others. If I understand correctly, you've never given an interview, therefore your story is exactly what we need. Gus G was silent, considering the offer or something else, but it was impossible to figure out exactly what. In the end, she spat out her answer with a jerk of her head.
Ask your questions, you're already here anyway.
There was something akin to curiosity in her words. Nodding, Nova started with general questions she didn't really care about. They were about a springboard to the actual goal, knowledge about a single painting. Of course, we can't forget the lost portrait of a young man by Raffaello. Frowning, she leaned back in her chair. You were part of the group that searched for the painting after the arrest of Hans Frank, weren't you?
I was.
For a moment, it was silent. The old woman grinned, running her yellow nails on her right hand over the skin on her left.
Is that what you want to learn about, the Raffaello piece?
Oh, of course. It's just a mystery. Can't leave anyone indifferent.
I won't tell you anything you don't already know. I never found it. You won't either. Because some things don't want to be found.
We're not looking for the painting. We just want to tell the story. Do you remember any interesting details about the search, perhaps? She laughed hoarsely.
What interesting details. You think I would have sat and done nothing for so many years if I knew anything remotely useful? I would have found the cursed canvas and sold it already.
Nova inhaled and exhaled slowly. The smug grin on her face annoyed her. Does she really know nothing, or is she just pretending?
Well, any more questions?
Could you write down the names of those you worked with? The ones you remember? The old lady hobbled over to the dresser and started rummaging through the drawers, but didn't find any paper or pens there. It took about 5 minutes for her to finally find a notepad and pen after having checked a dozen different places. Even then, the ink in the pen seemed to have dried up, refusing to transfer to paper. The catcher took a pencil out of her bag and handed it to her. Here, you can keep it. The old woman grimaced, but didn't answer. Taking the pencil in her left hand, she began to write while Nova was stewing in her own frustration. The slow grinding of the rod on the page was maddening. A black greasy spot with 8 thin legs appeared on the huge web in the corner. Its owner. Nova forced herself to turn away. Turning her attention back to Gus G, she noticed that the woman had stopped writing and was now pressing her palm to her eye. Madame de Boer, are you alright? She stood up to take a closer look at her, but Gus G only croaked something, pulling away. There was blood running down her cheek. Did you take the pencil and shove it in your eye? I'm serious. I'm literally serious. She tried to John Wick her, so anyway, 2 to sun intimacy, 1 to moon, 2 to status, 0 power, and hey, look at those diamonds. Alright, so before I get them, remember to like, share, and subscribe if you did enjoy the video. Also head down the description, plenty of things to check out, as well as our Discord server. Consider joining. Without further ado, I'll say the following. You know, yes, if you are a person who believes in God or whatever have you, it does get frustrating. Um, it really does. When you go through a life of trials and whatever have you, that basically, nothing goes your way. Nothing. And I know how difficult that can be as a person who has. I especially initially did believe in a higher power, in God, and all that. And as I got older, teenage years and beyond that, I went searching for him. And even considered other religions besides, like, say, for instance, Christianity. And I never found really any answers. I always had more questions than I had answers. And also the fact that I had gone through so much, things that, I can't really say on YouTube. I kind of just was like, you know what, I accept there might be a higher power, and I'm not gonna, completely close the door on it, but I'm not going to do what some of you do every night, and that's, pray and who, what, when, where, and why. And then I think also prayers just, I don't know. It's something that I just don't get. I just really don't. Like I said, it's because of all the things and trials that I've gone through that it's not for me, I guess. I don't know. Like I said, I could always talk about it some other time, but clearly at the end of this video is not it. Once again, thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you all later. Peace out.